Well, thank you so much for that very kind introduction, Jamie. And I would like to congratulate you and all of Walmart Canada for yesterday's amazing announcement, which you described so well, of your new fulfillment center in Rocky View County. It's always great to see global companies like Walmart choosing to invest here and create jobs and opportunities and make our community stronger. I'm so pleased to hear that you see a very long and prosperous future with us working together. And thanks to Deb Yedlin for the great leadership that you have shown at the Chamber. We had a wonderful roundtable discussion this morning. We've got another roundtable discussion that is going to happen later on this afternoon. And so I'm looking forward to getting feedback. I also know every time I address a Calgary room that only 48% of you likely voted for me. So I'll try not to be very partisan in what I'm putting forward today and just talk about the opportunity and the shared values that we have and the shared goal that we have of making Calgary one of the absolute best places in the country to live and work and raise a family. And of course, just want to thank the Calgary Chamber for inviting me to join you today, because I always appreciate the opportunity for a discussion on growing our economy that comes from an understanding that private enterprise fuels that growth. And that's one of the main reasons why I respect the Chamber's contributions to Calgary's business community. So I want to jump straight to the concern that is at the front of mind for many people here, and that is, what does the recent election mean for Calgary? And for the answer, you only have to look at the cabinet table and the message that it sends. The government has a fantastic team of people across the board. There's several of the ministers that Deb introduced earlier. Let me tell you what you have in Calgary. We have 9 ministers representing Calgary. We have our Deputy Premier and Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, that's Mike Ellis. With us today, we have Matt Jones, he's Minister of Jobs, Economy and Trade. We have Mickey Amory, who is our Minister of Justice, Rebecca Schultz, our Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rick McIver, Minister of Municipal Affairs, he's here today as well. Mohammed Yassin is Minister of Immigration and Multiculturalism, Dimitrios Nicolaides, Minister of Education, and Rajan Sani, Minister of Advanced Education, as well as Tanya Furr, who's Minister of Arts, Culture and Status of Women. And of course, Nathan Newdorf is here today as well, who's Utilities and Affordability, and Nate Horner, who had a major announcement today on our annual report. He's our Minister of Finance and Treasury Board, and I'll speak to that in a few minutes. So Calgary is strongly represented at the cabinet table because this city's interests are front and center in our government's plans, as is our dedication to pro-growth, low-tax, free market policies that continue to ensure that Calgary is a magnet for investment from around the world. And we're seeing that investment in more areas than ever before. We already mentioned, of course, Walmart Canada's grand opening yesterday in Rocky View County, but you do know as well about de Havilland's investment in Wheatland County, and WestJet is making Calgary its hub for travel. Venture capital investment is pouring into the city as our tech and innovation sector continues to grow. And I understand Calgary itself recently cracked the top 100 in Startup Genome's Global Startup System Report. Calgary-based companies are growing, and major international companies are choosing to expand right here. People are moving here in record numbers, all while the city continues to be one of the most powerful drivers of Canada's economy. My promise to you is that over the next 4 years, we will do everything we can to build on Calgary's strengths. And you'll see this where some of the support will be when we announce our ministers' mandates. That'll be coming up in the coming weeks. But there are infrastructure improvements that we've already been clear on. First of all, of course, we've signed a memorandum of understanding with the city and the Calgary Exhibition and Stampede and the Calgary Sports and Entertainment Group to contribute up to $300 million, mostly over the next 3 years, to revitalize the Rivers District. Of course, they'll be building an arena in there too, but the things that we're going to be investing in are the major infrastructure costs that go in to cover the cost of roads and bridges, LRT connections, and other infrastructure work, such as a 6th Street South East underpass and upgrades to 15th, 17th, and 25th Avenues South and East, plus also community gathering areas. I had a chance recently to go to Toronto. I was just telling my table, and I thought, well, why don't I go the slow way? I took the Edmonton to Toronto via rail line, the Canadian, and I got to stop in Winnipeg. And if you haven't been there, it's just such a wonderful walk around community in the Forks district, which had the stadium for baseball as the anchor to be able to build that community out. When I walk around that, or when I walk around Rogers Place, or when I have gone down to watch a Golden Knights game, that's what I'm really hoping the vision for this area is going to be, with a lot of community gathering places, lots of places for outdoor patios and restaurants and retail, new residential, new hotels. I am so excited about it. But as part of the agreement as well, we'll partner with the city to build a 1,000-seat community arena for kids hockey right next to the new arena and sports center. And these critical infrastructure improvements will not only rejuvenate downtown and some of Calgary's most visible landmarks, but also create jobs, lead to billions of dollars in economic activity, and contribute to the fabric and spirit of the city. And that's been our overriding goal from the start, growing our economy so there are more jobs for Albertans. And that's why we also reduce taxes and cut red tape and let the rest of the world know that Alberta is calling for people who want the opportunity that a strong Alberta economy brings. And to that, between January and March, almost 16,000 Canadians chose to make Alberta their home. It's our 7th straight quarter of net interprovincial growth. They were joined by almost 36,000 people who moved here from around the world. We are on track for the fastest population growth since 1914, according to economist Trevor Tombe. The best and brightest are choosing Alberta. Businesses from all over the world are choosing Alberta. Families, job creators, entrepreneurs, employers, and business owners know that low taxes, good jobs, a skilled workforce, and high wages matter. And that economic diversification we've been talking about for decades is actually happening. This morning, you may have seen our year-end fiscal update. We committed to moving the economy forward, and we're reaping the benefits. We ended the fiscal year with an $11.6 billion surplus, which exceeded the budget 2022 projection by $11.1 billion. In 2022-23, Alberta paid down $13.3 billion in debt, which eliminated $260 million in annual debt servicing charges. That's money that will stay in our province and be available for us to be able to support programs. And because we invested further in the Heritage Savings Trust Fund and kept investment income within the fund, its market value grew by $2.5 billion to help secure the province's future. Lower debt servicing costs and higher revenues are going to help support high quality healthcare and education and job training, infrastructure investments, and assistance for our vulnerable Albertans who most need it. And let's talk about higher revenues for just a minute. The high price of oil played a strong role in ensuring we ended the fiscal year on solid footing, but it's not the whole story. In our first term, we reduced the corporate income tax from 12% to 8%. We did that to encourage investment and diversification, and it's working. We brought in a record $8.2 billion in corporate income tax revenue in 2022-2023, the highest amount in a single year. Well, I should be thanking all of you for all of that, so thank you. There are a number of different factors that come into play and corporate income tax revenue, but the baseline is this. Pro-growth, low-tax, free market policies are important. They matter. It is no accident that investors are choosing Alberta, and we will welcome that rolled out. Now, obviously, Alberta has a lot going for it, and our government is making the most of favorable conditions by creating the most business-friendly environment in Canada. That starts with our low tax environment, continues with our focus on red tape reduction, so Alberta's job creators like you can do what you do best. And we want to ensure that you are able to succeed. We want to be able to continue to create jobs and build the economy. We're committed to ensuring that Alberta remains the economic engine of Canada, and Calgary is a critical part of that. We have a lot going for us, and I'm excited about the future of Calgary and the future of Alberta, and I'm excited to continue to partner with all of you to continue building a strong future for every Alberta family, a strong future that strong Calgary, building on our strengths and finding new opportunities to expand and to succeed. And I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation with Deb Yedlin here in just a few minutes. So thank you, and we'll continue the conversation in just a few minutes.
The current Lethbridge feed grain prices are as follows. Cash barley's at $4.15, feed wheat's at $4.10, and corn is down $8 at $3.95 per metric ton. In the milling wheat markets, September Minneapolis futures increased 7 1/4 cents at $8.25, with local hard red spring bids for July movement at $10.50 per bushel. In the oil seeds, nearby canola futures gained $8.50 at $7.09 per ton, with delivered values for July movement at $16.30 per bushel. In the pulses, nearby red lentils are trading at 33 cents a pound, and yellow peas remained at $11.25 per bushel. In the cattle markets, August live cattle lost 10 cents at $173.77 per 100 weight. For more information, call me at 403-394-1711. I'm Sean Smith at Marketplace Commodities, accurate real-time marketing information and pricing options.
Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny.
Up to question and answers afterwards. I'll leave it to Minister.
Sure. Thank you, Charlotte. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to present Alberta's results for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Our fiscal update today is a positive one. It is an indication of the progress we've made in securing Alberta's finances. I'm happy to tell you that for the second consecutive year, we balanced the budget and are reporting a surplus. But first, I want to provide a bit of context. The numbers I will discuss today are for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Over that time, we saw some of the most extreme energy market volatility, along with geopolitical events that created global instability and uncertainty. The war in Ukraine added to supply pressures, and in June 2022, oil prices spiked, reaching over $120 US per barrel, eventually averaging $89.69 over the course of the fiscal year. That's $19.69 higher than our budget 2022 projection of $70 US per barrel. All of this impacted Alberta by increasing revenue, but also reminded us of the need to build long-term sustainability so our finances can be less sensitive to changes in circumstances beyond our control, and so future generations can prosper. This year's results position us to allocate sizable amounts of money towards paying down debt and building savings for the future, while continuing to support the needs of today. Moving on to the numbers, which provide some perspective on what truly was a remarkable year for our province. Over the fiscal year, we brought in $76.1 billion in revenue. And expense for the year was $64.5 billion, which means we ended the year with an $11.6 billion surplus, $11.1 billion more than we estimated in budget 2022, and $1.2 billion more than our updated projections in the third quarter. As you might recall, we recently legislated a new fiscal framework that outlines how government is to use any surplus from the budget. While that only recently came into effect and will first apply to the current fiscal year, our priorities remain the same. Our improved situation as of last year is allowing us to pay down substantial amounts of debt, reducing the burden on future generations, and is ensuring more money can be put toward vital programs and services in the years and decades ahead. Paying down debt also helps reduce our debt servicing costs, which for 2022-2023 alone were $2.8 billion. We continued to put money in the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund, which I'll speak about further in a moment. Record levels of revenue due to higher oil prices and this government's solid fiscal management have brought our finances back into the black after years of deficits, which is why we're able to take these important measures while still increasing our capacity to support Albertans and their evolving needs. When we look back over the past fiscal year, there are several key factors that contributed to our record high revenue and which set the stage for the largest surplus in the province's history. Our revenue intake of $76.1 billion was $13.5 billion higher than we estimated in budget 2022. The key drivers were high non-renewable resource revenue of $25.2 billion and $26.5 billion in tax revenue. The latter point is important, considering we achieved it while successfully lowering the cost of living and doing business in our province. On top of eliminating the provincial fuel tax for a large part of the year, we also indexed personal income tax to match inflation, allowing Albertans to keep more of their hard-earned dollars in their pockets. Neither of these programs incurred any expense, and both were reflected as a reduction in revenue. Importantly, we also brought in $8.2 billion in corporate income tax revenue. That's the highest amount of corporate income tax revenue this province has ever generated in a single fiscal year. In addition to the impact of higher oil prices, this is a testament to our low-tax, business-friendly environment, which is encouraging investment and diversification and creating new jobs by the thousands. It's important to note that we generated our record amount of corporate income tax revenue with the lowest corporate income tax rate in the country, 30% lower than the next lowest province. While there are several factors that impact CIT revenue, this demonstrates that lower taxes mean more economic activity, and it speaks to the importance of maintaining a low tax environment. We intend to secure Alberta's significant tax advantage through legislation this fall, and will provide further details on that initiative in the coming months. In the meantime, we made a record investment in Alberta's health system in 2022-2023, expanding access with additional ICU beds and increased care for mental health and addiction. We invested in every stage of learning, ensuring quality K-12 education for our youth and building on our world-class post-secondary environment. We also made sure Albertans were able to benefit from the province's improved fiscal situation through the electricity rebate, the fuel tax relief programs, and relief payments, along with other initiatives that lessen the financial burden on Albertans during a time of high inflation. We spent $5.6 billion on our capital plan in 22-23, helping to support economic growth and development. Alberta's provincial highway networks make it possible to efficiently move goods and people throughout the province. Not only does our capital plan fund the maintenance of this critical infrastructure, it creates good jobs that attract skilled workers to our vibrant communities. And to support those people and communities, our capital plan funds the building and upgrading of schools, hospitals, and other facilities essential to Albertans' quality of life. While we recognize Alberta's fiscal strength now, it's important that we prepare for potential uncertainty in the future. Building the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund is one way we're doing just that. And I'm pleased to report that the Heritage Fund continues to grow. In 22-23, the Heritage Fund grew by $2.5 billion from the previous year, attaining a market value of $21.2 billion at the end of the fiscal year. The year-over-year change was primarily due to actions taken by the Alberta government. First, we took steps to amend the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund Act, passed by the Legislative Assembly earlier this year. These changes allow all investment income generated by the fund to be retained within the fund, instead of being transferred to general revenue. As a result, $1.25 billion of investment income from the 21-22 year was retained within the fund, along with our additional deposit of $753 million. Simply put, the Heritage Fund is Alberta's long-term savings account, and we're committed to growing it for the benefit of all Albertans. As we mark these positive results today, we do so with cautious optimism as we acquaint ourselves with some of the new realities in our province and in our world. While today our focus is on looking back, it's important to acknowledge that these results position Alberta for increased prosperity and opportunity moving forward. Rest assured that Alberta's government will remain committed to fiscal discipline as mandated through our new fiscal framework. We'll do so while ensuring Albertans continue to pay the lowest overall taxes in the country, and while retaining our position as the engine of growth for Canada and building on our reputation as one of the most business-friendly jurisdictions in all of North America. We'll also continue to make sure Albertans have access to the supports they need when and where they need them. In closing, today's results show one of the most positive fiscal years in our province's history. Thanks to this government's sound fiscal oversight and ability to responsibly manage historically high revenues, Alberta's finances are back to being in surplus. Our economy is continuing to diversify as we outpace our provincial counterparts in everything from job growth to interprovincial migration. Banks, forecasters, and economists are predicting Alberta will lead the nation in economic growth over the next 2 years. Our own Budget 2023 forecast shows the same. We know there are risks in the economy, high interest rates, high inflation, and global geopolitical uncertainty among them, but there is much to be optimistic about in our province, and today's results speak to that. And they affirm that our commitment to strong fiscal management is working. So thank you very much, and I'd now be happy to take any questions.
So we'll now move on to the Q&A portion. So we'll do one question, one follow-up. We'll start in the room. There's a mic to your left there, and then we'll go to those on the phone. Before you begin, just please identify yourself and your outlet. With that, we'll go to the first question here, Kelly.
Kelly Kreiderman, Globe and Mail. I'm wondering, I know this is a look back at the last fiscal year, but we have WTI at under $70 a barrel right now. Are you worried about volatility in this current fiscal year? And are you worried that our budgeting system, needs to smooth out some of those, what has been a really chaotic energy market this year and last year?
Great question. I don't think you can have this job and not worry about things like the price of oil. As my deputy minister said, she wakes up in the middle of the night and looks at it some days. But I would say that we're confident in our plan, in the fiscal framework moving forward, that we have a plan to increase our expenditures at an appropriate way with CPI plus population growth, and that we can manage our non-renewable revenue in the best way that we can. And that's through accurate forecasting, which you will see in the first quarter fiscal report. It may have to come down, but I would say we had a strong handoff in a lot of our tax revenue, which you'll have to wait till the end of August to see. But we're not as worried as you may think. And there's a lot of sensitivities beyond just the price of WTI. There's obviously the rate of the currency, where the differential sits. The differential, for example, has been very helpful to us in this first quarter, which you will see at the end of August.
Did you follow up?
Your predecessor, Travis Taves, promised for a lot of his tenure to take a look at the revenue side of things as well. You talk about sustainability. Is that something that you will be looking at as finance minister?
I know in conversations with Minister Taves, I know it was one of his main regrets that he wasn't able to move on a full revenue review. That being said, I've been here a few weeks and haven't even received my mandate letter, so it's probably a conversation that need to have with the Premier first, but I think it's a sound idea and a great conversation that Albertans should be a part of.
Hi, Minister Elise Von Schiel with CBC. You mentioned that influx of migration to Alberta. How do you see that changing the fiscal picture over the next year? Because as we know, they come and they pay taxes, but they also need more services.
Sure. No, a great question, Elise. I think there's definitely a balance there. We'll see it in our personal income tax revenues. We also expect that we will feel it in the services required throughout this fiscal year and those into the future. But also it's important to understand that is answering one of the main needs of the province has right now, which is labor. So there's some good and some bad, but if you're going to be a low tax province, you have to be a pro-growth province. So we're gonna deal with it as it comes.
In answer to Kelly's question, you said maybe the province isn't as worried as we might think about the price of oil. It was all over the map last year. The $11 billion increase over what we expected to see, maybe compared to the last budget in royalties, is hardly a rounding error. It's a pretty big difference. So why aren't you worried, especially given policies we might see from the federal government and the things we might expect from the markets in the next couple of years?
I guess I would say, just to clarify, I'm always worried, like wake up in the middle of the night worried, just like my deputy minister. But I would just say that the forecasted price, that's over the course of the fiscal year. So we're only in the very early days, the end of the first quarter. And a lot of the optimism was always built into the back half of the year around the price of oil, and that optimism still exists. So while it may look daunting right now, we're trying to be patient, and I hope all of Albertans can be patient for the first quarter fiscal update.
Hi there, Michael King, Global News. When expenditures are tied to CPI and to inflation, there's still concerns among some industries, especially when we're talking education, that Alberta will continue to lag behind when it comes to per capita spending. They need that kind of one-time top up to get up to Canadian averages. What sort of flexibility will there be to enable those spending top ups to try and match with provincial averages?
Well, I would say that something that's important to understand in the fiscal framework is that rule, the CPI plus population growth ceiling, it does adjust every year, but that's for our spending as a whole. So individual ministries that have more pressure may spend more than others, but that's something we'll have to average out as we sit around Treasury Board and look at where the pressures are coming from.
And can you just elaborate a little bit more when you look at, you say you're worried about the price of oil and there's an important need to go through and diversify. What sort of plans are we expecting in the next year here?
Well, I think you'd see it's happening. Sometimes it's hard to tell because the numbers from oil and gas are so significant, but you're seeing right now the most diversified economy Alberta's ever seen. And it's happening in tech, agri-food investment, film and television. It is happening, and those things will continue to pay us dividends into the future.
Great, thanks. Well, with that, we'll go to the phones. Operator, put through the first caller.
David Staples, Edmonton Journal.
Hi, Minister. So we're seeing very high levels of immigration and migration to Alberta. What are the pros and the cons in terms of the Alberta economy for this kind of movement to the province?
Thank you, David. There's definitely some pros and cons. Overall, we're very pleased to see it. But I would say that it will put pressure on our services and our expenditure side going forward, but it is answering one of the main needs of Alberta today, and that is the labor market. Everything from housing to other pieces of construction. You would see in this annual report, we weren't able to complete all of the capital spend as we would have hoped. Some of that is the capacity of the labor market. So this population surge hopefully is part of an answer to that. But it also will definitely serve us well on the personal income tax side. But it does come with spending pressures for sure.
Did you have a follow-up, David?
Yeah. In the United States, we see a trend where people are leaving Democrat states for Republican states where the economy is freer and they're more able to conduct business. Do you think the same dynamic, are we seeing the same dynamic here in Canada? Alberta being in the place of the Republican states where the rules are more friendly to business?
Well, I would say maybe leaving partisan politics out of it, I would say Alberta is proud to be a pro-growth jurisdiction. And if you're going to be a low-tax jurisdiction, and remind you that we're the lowest tax jurisdiction other than 6 states in all of North America, you have to have a pro-growth mindset. So I hope that those people come here to seek that opportunity that they're not finding elsewhere. And through their efforts and labor, we're going to see a growth in every sector of our economy, and that's what we're shooting for.
Great. Operator, can you put through the next caller?
Catherine Skowski, Alberta Today.
Morning, Minister. So I hear you saying that the overall budget will be capped at CPI plus population growth. But I also hear you're talking about growing the tax advantage. As you mentioned, oil revenues the price of oil is dropping. So what's going to give here? Where are you going to need to cut somewhere? I just don't understand the math on that.
Well, once again, today is about the annual report, the year that ended March 31st, 2023. And you're going to have to be patient. I know it's tough but we'll have more to say at the end of August with the first quarter fiscal report. But like I said, it's not just the price of oil. There's many sensitivity factors that can make a big difference with that number. And like I said, there's been a strong handoff on all the other parts of the economy. So I know it's tough, but please be patient with me. I'm trying to.
Do you have a follow-up, Catherine?
Yeah, and so when you're talking about reducing that reliance on sensitive revenues that are beyond your control, we're also hearing from the Premier that the oil and gas industry will not be phased out. So what is the long-term plan here? You had mentioned tech, agri-food, other sectors, but what is the long-term plan if we're not phasing out oil and gas?
Well, we're definitely not phasing out oil and gas. And I think even if you read articles out as recent as today, you know, even moving towards a carbon neutral 2050 economy doesn't mean the phase out of oil and gas. And I think Alberta's well positioned. We'll be producing right to the end of oil's useful life. We'll be one of the last jurisdictions producing that last barrel. And just because demand is potentially less, that doesn't mean price will necessarily be lower either. So there's lots of things to consider as we move forward. But the best part about being a low tax pro growth jurisdiction is that you don't need to pick winners and losers. We have very few instances where we have specific tax credits to target a specific type of growth. We brought one out last year for agri-food value-added investment. That's an area that's highly sought after by neighboring jurisdictions. We have the film and television tax credit, which has done some amazing things for the province and builds on a lot of our natural strengths. And we have the APIP, the Alberta Petrochemical Incentive Program, which is provides so much benefit, especially when you work in the royalty side, but also playing to our strengths. A lot of the growth in the industrial heartland is due to it. So we're going to stay a low tax, broad-based economy, and Alberta is going to grow in all of these sectors, as it already is.
Great. Operator, can you put through the next caller?
Graham Thompson, the Star.
Yeah, thank you. Just to confirm something, to make sure it's clear, as Kelly pointed out, I know you're talking about the last fiscal year, but you have mentioned looking ahead. You're not as worried as we may think you are. But looking at something you talked about, if the price of oil is $10 below the projected price for this current year, are you saying that can be counterbalanced by the exchange rate between us and the U.S. dollar? So even if we're getting less money from oil than anticipated, we'll make that up because of the exchange rate.
There's a few factors in there, Graham. The exchange rate is one. The other is the forecasted differential. But that's very volatile as well. The differential was at about $11 yesterday, and it's about at 14 today. But for every dollar you're out over the course of the year on the differential, that means $600 million to the fisc. Much like every dollar of WTI you're out means $630 million. Every cent you're out on the exchange rate means $490 million. So that's the magnitude of these sensitivities. And the differential, while we've been below on WTI, the differential's been in our favor for a lot of this first quarter. But again, I have to ask everyone to be patient and wait for the first quarter fiscal at the end of August.
Graham, a quick follow-up?
Yeah, okay, quick follow-up. Just wondering on this idea of a review of revenue. That's something you mentioned today, and of course, Travis Taves talked about that in the past. Would that review include everything, all revenues, including taxes and potentially a provincial sales tax?
Like I said, I haven't even received my mandate letter, Graham. All I know is that I have had conversations with Minister Taves, and it was one of his regrets. And I think it's always a sound conversation that we should be having with Albertans. I think there's a lot of merit to it. So what all it would entail, that will be a conversation for another day.
Operator, can you put through the next caller?
Emmanuel Prince, Radio Canada.
Yeah, that was. Hi, my question is on the fuel tax freeze. the report says that it saved Albertans $850 million, but it cost the province $1.1 billion. So there's like a $250 million gap between the benefits that it saves Albertans and the cost to the province. Where did this money go?
I think it's just a discrepancy in numbers, sir. I can have the department answer that more fully, but there isn't the $300 million difference. The entirety of the savings is passed on to the consumer.
Did you want to follow up?
Okay. Yep. And about oil price volatility, you talk about like responsible fiscal management and working on the revenue side, but do you commit in any way on not cutting spending?
Do I commit to any way in not cutting spending?
Like cutting spending in healthcare, cutting spending in education to make the budget balance the next budget?
Oh, I would just say we're in very early days. We haven't even finished the first quarter. The first quarter is generally an anomaly. That's what my department tells me. So we're gonna walk towards this, not run, and be patient. And like I said, a lot of that optimism is built in the back half of the year. But we have fiscal rules in place for a reason, because we're serious about them. So I think that's our pledge to Albertans, that we're serious, because we know our revenue side is so volatile. We know that our spending side needs to be consistent, and the growth that needs to be built within it needs to be very steady and very defensible with CPI plus population growth.
Great. We have time for one more question. I'll end in the room with Kelly.
Okay, you talk about the revenue side being so volatile, but a key campaign promise from your party is introducing legislation that would force a plebiscite if you want to increase taxes. How restrictive is that going to be for you, and are you going to be in charge of introducing that legislation?
The expectation is that, yes, I will introduce Bill 1. But I think it's a pledge to Alberta and the province that we're serious about managing Alberta's finances. You know, that's why we brought in the fiscal rules. We didn't bring them in to handcuff some future government. We brought them in to handcuff ourselves, to show Albertans that we understand we have a volatile revenue source, and we need very thoughtful, defensible spending rules and guardrails.
And you talk about Alberta's advantage, and part of that Alberta advantage has been affordable housing. We are seeing a severe erosion of that, especially in Calgary. Is that something your government plans to address in any significant way?
Well, I think housing is front of mind for many levels of government, and I think you will see policies from our government that look to move the needle. I would say, look, we had an Alberta's calling campaign. We knew it was an advantage. We also were very short of labor. So we use those things to our advantage to try to entice people to come and make a life here in Alberta. So everything has a balance and a cost and effect. But I think overall it's a great news story. And I'm happy that we are going to get to have conversations and deal with all the problems associated with being a pro-growth province.
Great. Thanks, Minister. We got to
just ask a question about your family name. Of course, you come from a very famous Western Canadian family, and you're becoming finance minister 10 years after your cousin was finance minister, your grandfather, your great-grandfather. What are your reflections on that, on Horner continuing to be involved in Alberta politics?
Well, my dad would tell you I should have known enough to stay out of it. But I'd say, I think it's a noble endeavor, and if you look at it that way, I think you want to try to do your best for your fellow Albertans, and that's the way I was brought up. So proud to be part of it, and cousin Doug's he's on speed dial, as is Travis and Shirley McClellan. So I have a lot of former finance ministers in my phone that I can lean on if need be, and I just told Doug I was going to do a better job, so he snickered. But no, it's a nice legacy. I'm proud to be part of it. Just want to do a good job.
Great, thanks, Minister. That's all the time we have for today.
Thank you all.
Morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Nathan Newdorf, and I'm the Minister of Affordability and Utilities.
Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines, helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny.